everybody to the Thursday, October 8th Town Board Workshop. We have a pretty good agenda tonight. We moved something to the front here. Last week at the board meeting, we decided to table a series of resolutions on cleaning bids for the 7 facilities, town-run facilities. And I was able to get back with some of the department heads that we needed clarification on in this week. So I think we are ready to do these resolutions. Paul, do you want to describe anything on these?
Yeah, the bid actually had 7 pieces to it, which included six of our locations and 1 extra floor cleaning option at the recreation center. And I think the board's going to adopt all except the library piece.
Yes.
So we'll reject that portion of the bid.
Yeah.
The library's going to just continue to use their own people.
Yeah, and just, before we, rehashing everybody from last week, the highway department, and Joe Hooks is here, and our patron from the sewer department had asked about keeping the incumbent cleaning services. And totally understood, for familiarity, for the uniqueness of your facility, great. But the bids from their incumbents, one, they did not have the aggregate low bid of all 7 facilities, and 2, they did not have the individual low bid for that facility alone. And because of that, I don't think this board could rationally allow those incumbents to continue to be the cleaning service for those venues, facilities. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not to get ahead, but I needed to talk to Terry Bennett, the head of the library, because obviously the library is a very special handled budget item in that the town board doesn't really have a lot of control over the granular line item by line item, how they use their money. And so I don't think the town board could just say, hey, we got a bid for the library that is less than what you're paying right now for the library. But if the library decides they want to keep their incumbent because it's how their money, they can do that. Is that the way everybody understands it?
Yes.
Yes.
And they have decided to do that. So that kind of gives a reason for why you see the wording in the second resolution. So, any questions, comments from the board members?
No.
I will say one thing. Paul, we talked about aggregate savings to the town from the 6 facilities that we are accepting these bids annually.
It's right around, I have it right here. It's right around 80,000.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
and I want to thank you for going through that process and dissecting all of it, and the board for working through it as well. It's certainly a considerable savings.
Needed to be done.
And it sets a benchmark, Mr. Cahill,
I know,
for
pressure's on.
lawn cutting.
Yes.
I don't think you can beat that.
We'll see.
I think Paul is going to beat you.
I don't know. We added 2.
Okay, we'll see.
Areas, so.
Anyway,
So
so
up for a challenge.
I propose a resolution to award the cleaning services bids to Alliance Cleaning Services. The bid covers the town hall offices, the police department offices, the Van Ingen Court building, the highway administration building, the wastewater treatment plant administration building, the recreation center, and the recreation center floor option at an annual amount of $106,624.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Okay, and the next step, Charlie, you and I will be up on board when we talk to Alliance as we hammer out the contract details, because I think the next resolution for this board will be authorizing the supervisor to sign the contract. But there are some very specific things we're wanting in that contract, vetting of their employees, things like that. So, and then the next resolution, a resolution to reject the cleaning service bid for the Webster Public Library. So moved.
Second?
I'm sorry, was that Bill or Barry?
Who's Bill?
favor? Anybody opposed? Passes.
Mr. DeBoer? Yes, sir. We only missed by 1 minute, 5:36.
No worries.
Floor is yours. You get till 5:51.
5:51, okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I appreciate you allowing me to present some information to you tonight. My name is Dave DeBoer. I am a proud resident of Webster for the last 22 years, and I'm here to represent the ST Network. The ST Network is basically a two-part company. One is a not-for-profit organization, and the other is a cost utility audit firm. And that company is called TRI, Cost Utility Reductions. In the folder I presented everybody on the right-hand side and inside, there's a packet. If you'd like to grab that and follow along, you can. I'm going to refer to some information in there and also speak on some other things that are not in that packet. But on the cover of that, as you can see, it says in a single year, public utility companies have overbilled their customers $19 billion. So my goal was, talking with Tom and Paul and now presenting to the board, was to get the lovely town of Webster some monies back that they possibly have overspent unknowingly on water, telecom, gas and electric, sewer, and internet service. Okay. So if you turn into the first page there, Lily Steinberg runs TRI, Utility Cost Reductions. She's been in the industry for 30 years. She's based out of Manhattan. She also has an office in Florida. She is the founder of this industry. She's been doing it for 30 years. She has proprietary software that nobody else has. So much so that PricewaterhouseCoopers asks her to double check their work. And if you look up PricewaterhouseCoopers, if you don't know who they are, they're one of the largest auditing firms in the world. So basically what happens is we as a company don't get paid $1 unless you guys make $2. All right, it's a 50-50 split. You have no legwork. You do nothing other than supply us with a 1 month's bill for each commodity. We do all the legwork after that. A portion of that 50% that we take goes to not-for-profit. And the not-for-profit right now is called Dig Deep. And it's based in New Mexico. What that does is it provides clean water to the Navajo Nation. Unbeknownst to me, before I got into this business, I thought that nations, Indian reservation nations, were very well off. You see casinos and whatnot, and it looks like they have a lot of money. A majority of them are like third world countries. They don't even have running water. So one of our main goals is to help, first and foremost, the Navajo Nation in New Mexico get running water to people that don't even have running water there. So that's where a portion of our piece of the puzzle goes to. Of course, some of that's going to go to Lily's team, who is doing all the auditing. Each audit, each segment has a different auditor. Okay, so there's a lot of legwork involved in that as well. And then obviously a portion of it goes to us, individuals out there doing the presenting to folks like yourself. Some of the areas in the surrounding areas that you might have heard of, obviously in New York State, that we've already done audits for and or what's called a recovery. Poughkeepsie, the town of, we've got $100,000 back for them. Niagara Falls, $800,000. And Lawrence, New York, we got $40,000 for them. Those are just some of the area ones we've done. If you go ahead and take that book that I talked about and flip over to the third page, you'll see some copies of some checks on there, and obviously the names are scratched out of them. It's kind of like a HIPAA law. If they don't allow us to tell you their names, we can't do it. But the second one down on the left-hand side, you'll see a check for $3 million. That was just on telecom alone for a hospital in Syracuse. Okay, telecom is the biggest abuser of billing in this umbrella. Okay, for whatever reason, they seem to overcharge, whether it's tariffs, taxes, contractual language. They're the biggest abuser of this. Obviously, you could probably tell with your home Verizon or AT&T bill, there's 10, 15 pages. We have no idea what's inside those pages. We just see the number on there, and whether it looks a little high or low, we just pay it and maybe question it, but we don't know what's inside of there contractually wise. That's where we come in. That's where we dig in, and we find out if you've overpaid over the last up to 8 years. Okay, we also do that with gas, electricity, and water, and sewer, and internet, like I mentioned. So some of those checks you can see are quite large. If you go ahead and turn a couple more pages, You'll see that there's some testimonials in there from people that we've already done some work with. Fifth page in at the bottom, Lily over the past 28 years to 30 years has dealt with Fortune 500 companies. That's been her main objective. As you can see, some big names there. Those are her clients. GE, American Airlines, Marriott, Canon, A&E, among some others. By joining with us, she's able to reach out to the villages of Webster's, the Poughkeepsies, the municipalities that her auditors and marketers can't reach out to. Okay, so that's why she joined with us. Plus, she was a big proponent of the not-for-profit piece that we offered to be able to give back to communities and help basically underprivileged people. And the next page just is a little bit more about who she is. Lily, that's a picture of Lily. And then in the back, you'll see there's some villages that we also did. The Lawrence Village, again, the $20,000 utility. We did Bethel, Connecticut. We got them $52,000. Elmira College, we did one for Elmira College. They did not give us the number, but they sent us a letterhead saying, allowing us to share that with you folks. Last page, town of Walcott, same thing as Elmira College. A recovery is a little bit different than a simple audit. Our recovery team does an audit, yes. However, the audit is based on 30 years of accumulated data from working with our clients that you saw on some of those pages and applying national, state, and local regulations to the bills, okay? And this allows TRI to also negotiate on behalf of you, the client, using prior results and precedents, okay? So much so that in the last 10 years, no one that we've been able to find a recovery for, example, Verizon has challenged Lily's team on an audit to the fact that they have an agreement in place that if Lily does find a refund for the client, they will not try to sue and say that it's not substantiated. Okay, why? Because Lily's track record speaks for itself, and that would also expose that company to media, and they don't want that. So she's been proven that her work is substantiated, and they don't even go to that point of trying to combat her work. So that's about it, folks. Again, all we would need is a copy of each bill, 1 month's bill of each of the entities that we spoke on. And once it's in place, the auditors then would be in contact going forward with whoever is the point of contact on behalf of the town of Webster. So I guess with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
So your team, the team goes back and they audit the past bills?
Correct. We once we get the okay and the LOA, the letter of authorization from you folks, we're able to go back up to 8 years of billing based on RG&E, based on Verizon, based on Monroe County Water, and see what is in the language, A, contractual-wise, and B, if they've overcharged you on a number of different things, tariffs, taxes, language, so on and so forth. And if they did do that, we have the software to dig that up and say, listen, I just on the way here, I was talking to the gentleman that does the utility portion of things, and I'm sure everybody's heard of Diamond Packaging. We're in the process of getting them a recovery, and they're not finished with the utility side of things there yet, but they're up to $25,000 that they've recovered for her over at Diamond so far.
What about future billing?
We go up to 36 months future billing. That's part of the contract that we sign with you folks. A lot of clients actually, I don't like to use the word retain because that almost feels like you're paying a fee, but they like to keep us on up to 10 years because it's free of charge. Basically, if we don't find anything on your behalf, there's no money come out of pocket on behalf. It's just always a 50-50 split, whatever comes back.
It's funny, Paul and I met with Dave. One of the things that we gleaned out of this was that it's a service that's very hard to bid out and compare one company against another. To sit there and say that your company, we get 50% of the recovery, and then you guys with your charity get the other 50 or whatever. And you say, well, let's go out and look at other companies that do this, and maybe they're at 60-40. But the problem assuming in that each of the companies will come up with the same results. And if his company, because of the technology and the algorithms that Lily has built, we don't have a crystal ball to know that she could go out and get us a $100,000 recovery at 50/50, and the other company at 60/40 only goes out and gets us a $60,000 recovery. Did I lose anybody?
No.
I lost myself. Did I do the math right? Yeah. We would have made out better at the 50/50 than the 60/40.
Yeah.
Paul, is that essentially, I mean, we
Yeah,
were,
yeah, I mean, it's real hard to compare apples to apples,
yeah.
but it is a professional service.
Right.
Technically, it doesn't have to be bid.
Yeah.
If we want to give it a shot, we can.
Yeah.
And again, by all means, folks, I urge you to do your research on Lily and her team. You'll see that she's obviously second to none in this industry. So it's a safe bet that you'll be happy with what we come up with. In best case scenario, the town has done a fantastic job of finding the right folks on behalf of your billing, and nothing's coming back, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if there is nothing coming back to the town, then that means it's a good thing. You guys have not spent a penny more per se than you'd had to on all those bills in the past up to 8 years. So it's really, in our opinion, when we talk to folks, it's really a win-win for both the client and for us and the non-for-profit.
Our gas and electricity is purchased through Monroe County, through a company called Fluent Energy. So I'm not exactly sure how that will work.
Yeah.
But we'll look into it if we go forward with this. It's basically a consortium, so,
Yeah.
towns all over, throughout the county purchase through this. Yeah, so we pay Monroe County. We don't pay
Right.
Fluent.
How would that work?
Yeah,
We had spoke about this briefly when we first met.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that the bill comes to Monroe County in the town of Webster's name. I don't know
Yeah.
that. I would assume that because obviously Monroe County has to then take their pieces of the puzzle and separate them. They're not going to get one
Sure.
bill and say, okay, how much is Webster? Well, obviously, the piece comes in Webster's name. And that is what's called an ESCO, an energy supply company, would be a third-party supplier. What we would need would be a copy of that portion of a month's bill that comes to Monroe County on your behalf, and I'm sure there's a contract in place with that third-party supplier. We would just need a copy of that contract. But I will, if it's okay with you, Paul, I'll reach out to you and or you send me, I've got my card and email on the exact name of that company, and I'll reach out to our auditor that's in the utility side of things and ask if he's A, heard of that before, and B, if there's anything more needed on our behalf from you folks.
contract's probably with Monroe County.
Years ago, we did an experiment with a windmill down at the sewage treatment plant. They put up, through NYSERDA, we got a grant.
Really?
Yep, and they put up a test windmill to see if we could take advantage of it, and it came back that the prices that we were getting from Monroe County were so low that it wouldn't pay for us to do so.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not going to sell for you, Dave, but what I liked about it was, and being an old auditor, the audit costs us money up front. Well, similar to a couple months ago, was it the 123, the company that was going to take our investments and figure out a better way and make a better return.
Yeah,
But there was a risk that we had to put some money out there.
sure, yeah.
This doesn't come with that. And, it just seems like, wow, I mean, here we are in budget season in COVID-19, and we're trying to, really sharpen pencil and cut expenses without cutting services. This seemed like a...
And it occurred to me when you said it's professional service, so we don't have to go out to bid. Well, generally, we go out to bid for things we're spending money on.
Right.
We're not spending any money.
Yeah.
Indirectly spending money.
Sorry?
I think it's a smart move.
There's an indirect expense.
Well, indirect, but it's
Yeah,
also
they're
a
getting paid a
revenue.
fee.
It could be, it's a revenue as well.
Yeah, it's revenue to us.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
I'm in favor
and that's right, and Charlie's already, I didn't, I knew professional services. And I don't even know if it's really a resolution to sign in that contract, but it's certainly something we wanted to bring to the town board, so you guys heard.
Oh, I'm glad you
And-
did, thank
and,
you.
You know, 5 sets of eyes are better than, no, 6 sets of eyes, because you were,
So-
me and you were 2,
Yeah,
so.
so you can let us know.
I'm not sure
We wanna move
if
forward.
I'm hopeful for the outcome that we get nothing back or we get lots. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
To be quite honest, you're hoping that you get nothing back,
Right,
right? Because then you're splitting nothing with
Yes.
nothing, right?
it's
But-
similar to having diagnostic tests done.
Exactly.
Comes out negative, that's a good thing.
But without knowing, you wouldn't know, right? I mean, I guess
Right.
that's the caveat.
Yep.
I think the third-party billing or from Monroe County, I think that's gonna be important to get that information, because there could be some significant gains in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we had talked about this. There was another piece of the conversation, which I'm sure we'll talk about another time. But you know, they may not. That company that they're with may not be giving you folks the best pricing either,
Right.
right? There's a lot of competition out there, and they may not be. They may be just saddled into what they've been using, and that may not be what's the best behalf of the town of Webster. Might be the best for Monroe County.
Yeah.
It might not be the best for you folks. So that was another caveat that we talked about as well, and that's for another discussion, I think. But yeah, again, you know, no upfront money to you folks at all. Just either copies of the bills put on a PDF, and we do the rest of the work.
If you know, the board is okay, can Paul and I, do you see any problems with us
I give you a green light.
proceeding on with Dave? And
Sure.
Absolutely. You guys updated on the results?
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks
Dave.
for coming in.
All right, folks, I appreciate your time. Have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dave, dress up nice.
Dave, any relation to Sal?
The story you're about to start.
We bowled together for many years. Yeah. My name is Barry Dean.
Very deep.
Yeah, you grew up off of Clem Road.
Actually, grew up in West Round.
Okay.
I graduated high school, my parents built
Yeah, contemporary way, yeah.
me and my wife. And we got married, we got out of the
Is your dad still alive?
Yes, it was a mother.
Please tell him I said hello.
I will, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You know everybody. It's like 6 degrees of separations of Barry Dean in this town, isn't it?
What's that?
Was he any good?
Oh, he was good.
And now you'll find out how Barry was.
Folks, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
Take care.
All right, good seeing you.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Oh, boy. Joe? Wait a minute. Oh, that's a misstatement. These are supposed to be 15 minutes, so this should have started at 5:50, and it's starting at 5:55.
Starting my time.
No, but I gotta tell you, well, you start, because I saw the letter that you sent to the board, and whew, that was some interesting reading.
Well, I had a question for you. When you said old auditor, did you mean age or years of service within that title? You referenced yourself as an old auditor.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody else picked up on that, but
And it's funny, I gotta say that Paul Adams, who did a type of auditing that I would have been really interested to do in his probably like forensic auditing, he's
Certified fraud examiner.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. What stuff that he has done as far as what he's analyzed and things, I mean, you can tell that you were a forensic auditor.
Yes.
Yeah. When I have you balance
It's
my
enjoyable.
checkbook personally,
Sure. Whatever you need.
I don't want to steal your time, Joe.
I assume everybody got the dissertation that I sent to everybody, got a chance to read it. That was a kind of a Reader's Digest version. Obviously, this has been ongoing for 2 decades now. There are unfunded mandates that every municipality across actually the United States, believe it or not, it's an EPA unfunded mandate. And we've been trying to accommodate as much service, as far as meeting compliance. As you read in the letter that we were audited in 2014, we fared fairly well, and it kind of helps out that I was chair of the coalition and still am. I've been since for 8 years now. We're approaching 8 years as far as chairing of that board. But I want you guys to be aware of what's involved. It is a very intricate and complex requirement. I know you two are probably, Bill and Barry are probably very familiar with it, being obviously Barry with the highway.
was on the
bill
initial board.
with that. It's an unfunded mandate that has been pretty much shoved down our throats. But it is something that we have to comply with.
When you were with the Rent-A-Quite? Yeah.
And so, I mean, we've been doing the best we can, but with Don leaving and Jeff no longer here, I am the only one in the boat right now that is registered with the EPA. And we need to expand that into whomever we hire, both my successor and or the town halls. I want to make sure that whoever we do hire has this knowledge and background, because this is something I've been working on and with Barry's acceptance and promotion when I was a foreman under Barry's reign. That was something that came down the pike, and since 2002 I've actually been on it. 2003 when the EPA mandates came in, I've been participating, and actually I in the last 15 years have taught in Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo, and Albany on municipal sustainability and unfunded mandates, because we've kind of pioneered the area, if you will, and that's all of New York State. That said, the new mandates, right now it's in draft form. There are new mandates coming out. We've already seen them. We sent back over 400 pages. The coalitions in New York State sent over 400 pages of corrections back to EPA and DEC saying there's no way that you can force this down our throats because we can't fund it. And not only that, but there's not enough time and staff to handle it. So it's back in draft form. They're modifying it. They've brought it back twice already. Now I've heard that it's been through Albany. It's at the local regions for their approvals and will be handed out shortly. These mandates are going to be even more strict than what we've been dealing with, which is a financial burden to MS4s, municipalities, but it's going to require for 303D listed water bodies, which all three are in Webster are. Technically, 4 Mile Creek on the east side is not. It just got removed from the list, but that's something else that I'll be approaching the board with at a later date because it still should be. We take in 3 other towns in that watershed. It's 15,203 acres of watershed that comes through our town, and the known pollutants already exceed a threshold, so it should still be on that list, but that's something we can handle internally. But nonetheless, 303D listing meaning that it has phosphate, nitrogen, and chloride loadings higher than acceptable levels. So we are under even more of a microscope by EPA and DEC for water quality. So the restrictions and guidelines for us in the new mandates are even worse, to the point where they wanted catch basins cleaned and sampled and monitored, and if they're suspect, we have to send them out to a lab to be tested and then pinpoint back the point source of pollution for that excessive threshold. It's getting a lot more complex. So whoever we bring in for succession has got to have this knowledge, hopefully, at least knowledge of the fundamentals of what we are, but being all of our town being 303D listed, we're under even more microscope. There's pros and cons of that. Since up to 2008, you read in the letter, we had 58 active residential and 19 commercial sites going out simultaneously, which put us under the microscope for the audit. But the advantage to 303D listed, not that we exceed the thresholds, but it makes us far more eligible for funding. Hence the reason a lot of the regional facilities that we're working in Empire Park, Finn Park, and a lot of the other what they call GL or GPCs, which are green infrastructure practices, are now there's funding through state and federal monies to help bring our thresholds back down. This is all knowledge that I have up here, but I'm not going to be here forever. We have to have somebody else coming in that's going to have this knowledge. I've handed off to my workforce down there as far as at highway what we need to comply with, but we need somebody that's knowledgeable outside of that. With the vacancies at the town hall now, and no offense, Josh, but we need somebody that's going to be able to sustain and maintain this compliance. Like I said, the EPA audit, which I have right here, if anybody really cares to read it or your board, which actually showed that we did very well in it. So one of the reasons for meeting with you folks is that I'm not sure offhand, I know, like I said, Bill and Barry, I know you're probably aware of it. I'm not sure, Patty and John, if you are or not. But these are things that we've been trying to comply with but it takes a chunk out of our budget. Not only the town's budget, the highway's budget. And trying to sustain this, and I've been doing a lot of it on my own, the inspections, my foremen are all set. We have annual inspections that require all 130 water management facilities.
Was Mike Geyer part of that?
Yes, Mike was doing my SWIP audits and reviews.
Who's
Now I'm
replaced
doing,
him?
what's that?
Who's replaced him? You?
Me.
Okay.
So I'm doing that as well. I'm doing, when we get the 303D listed, normally a watershed gets 1 inspection per week. 303D, 2 per week. So I'm reading 40 inspection reports a week. I have them all in electronic folders, but I'm doing also C of O inspections that are supposed to be, should be at the town hall. So I'm already on site, so it makes sense if I'm on site doing a C of O grading inspection or inspection for the site, I might as well do the SWIP inspections, erosion control measures as well. So it kind of makes sense that I'm already there. But again, I'm leaving, this stuff all needs to be handled. And I wanted you all folks to be aware,
Are you training anybody under you to do this?
not the SWIPs, no. No, I'm not. And normally, it's done through the DPWs. If you look at all the 19 other towns and 5 villages, normally it's the commish or DPW that handles, not the highway. Highway handles the ends that we directly involve or partake in, county work, school work, our work, but not for the whole town.
Okay.
And Webster, being in the last 3 decades, has led pretty much 29 out of 30 years or 20 out of 30 years in growth rates. We've been under the microscope, and it's a lot of work, I'm not gonna lie. But I make the most out of, when I'm on a site, I make the most out of all that. But I've already had 3 sites this spring shut down due to non-compliance issues. Try to do it verbally. If they don't comply, I give them a written letter, as well as meet with them as well. And then if they don't, go into a shutdown. And when I go to a shutdown, that's everybody. That's their drywallers, their electricians, their plumbers. Everybody goes home.
So you're talking about developments?
Yeah, and developments. But also commercial sites as
I'm
well.
only saying that so everybody else
Right,
understands.
no, I appreciate that, because it's not up here, but again, to elaborate to all you folks, it's a little different, more so if you're not familiar with it, not in the industry, there's a lot to this, and it's only gonna get uglier.
How long has Highway been taking care of these inspections rather than DPW?
Since 2002. Now, there has been with Don and Jeff, they were helping out, Don was taking care of the SWIFts, what they call the NOIs, Notice of Intent, SWIP acceptance forms. Any new development that comes in and exceeds 26,000 square feet has to go through the environmental issues, ESC, erosion and sediment control practices. If it's 26 to 1 acre, over 1 acre, it has to go through a full NOI, Notice of Intent, through Albany, DEC, be approved. If it's compliant to the regulations, 5 days to get it back. If it's not compliant, it's 60 days before they get it back. Right now, I'm the one handling all this, and it's a little overwhelming. I have enough to do with the highway, let alone
DPW used to have Mike Geyer, who was retired from the sewer department. He would do inspections 1 or 2 days a week.
2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. He'd be at my office at 6:30, and we'd go over the daily stuff. And Mike
And he
was
did that,
phenomenal.
he did that for in representing the DPW.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you next, so it was through
Correct.
DPW, okay.
Yep. Yes, so there's a lot to it, and it's more than I can handle right now. But obviously, with the vacancies, we'll do the best we can. So I wanted to bring that to your attention and make sure that whoever we hire, both my successor and at the town hall, that they have this knowledge or experience, because it is a federal compliance that we must meet.
Is it something that can be learned?
Yes. It's something that you taught, and depending on comprehension level, yes. It'd be nice if they had some experience coming in, at least knowing when I'm flying out NOT, NOI, NOS, ESC. The acronyms are like overwhelming. And it's funny because I have like 9 PowerPoints on my computer right now, all from the stuff that classes I teach. And one of them is just definition of acronyms, because it's incredible. There's 50 acronyms there, and they fly out like water out of a faucet. And if you don't know what they are, you can get lost very quick. It's like speaking French. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Again, I have just a little cheat sheet here, and I've got all the stuff here. The books and the documents that I have since 2002 in my office are overwhelming. But it was one of the things that we were very successful in the audit, though, because having all that documentation, showing the DEC and the EPA that I was on site every single day through the C of O inspections just made it even easier. So, and there were a couple other things I wanted to just touch base on that, again, with the town hall, and I'm not sure, this is probably not the venue for it. There's a couple other things I had sent Tom regarding some of the things that we need to be upgrade as well. which I think you're aware, we talked briefly on it as far as the code book. That needs to be brought current, and I wasn't unaware, and I talked to Barb, corresponded with several times with Barb, and I had about 20 pages, not 20 well, 2 pages, about 20 items or 25 items that need to be updated. Barb said, send them to me because they don't need to go to a referendum or a vote to be modified. If the code's already in there and there are modifications to the code, she can handle them, so I gave them all to her, she's good. Our building criteria, we still refer to the installation of ACP. Asbestos coated pipe has been installed in nearly 50 years. It's time to upgrade our, and hopefully before I leave, I'd like to see our building criteria updated and brought to current standards.
I want to thank you for giving that example, because as soon as the public hears that we're updating code that doesn't need to go to a resolution, they get really nervous. So it's important that they realize that it's minutia that we're looking to update. It's not overall code that's really affecting a development that's going to possibly be going in or something like that. It's, like you said, it's asbestos pipe. Nobody's installing it anymore. We need to get it out of the code. So it's important that people understand that.
Yeah, and I've prior to Jeff and with Josh, I have about 3 full pages of modifications to the code criteria, building criteria, that need to be upgraded as well. And practices that may not be New York State or 10 state standards, but it's something that we do because we're in erosive soil, sandy soil, vulnerable, E-pods. We have a lot of characteristics in here that require some special attention. So some of our codes and practices that we've instilled that we're modified or got to the developers are necessarily even thought of in the code book. So I want to bring that to current.
Thanks.
And the other thing I have is that I would like to see, and we were doing this for a while, but in the last 4 or 5 years it hasn't been done. Anytime there's a transfer of ownership, resident ownership, regardless if it's a C of O, new C of O, or a transfer from an older home buyer or selling your home, buying a home, 4 to 6 weeks after they move into the home, we used to send them a letter specifying what easements and restrictions they may have in their property. We haven't done that in 4 or 5 years, and what we're starting to see is the sheds, fences, pools, invisible fencing, irrigation systems, relentless. Every time we go to do work, we're digging or moving stuff out of our way.
This is where many of our license applications come from.
Yeah. So I'd like to see somebody again start distributing these letters. Initially it was George, I believe his name was Rebus. This was years ago. And then,
Wow.
Yeah, we're going back, but George was doing it, and then Gary had, I believe, George.
They're coming out of DPW.
What's that?
They're coming out of DPW.
Joe Rebus, that's it.
I can tell you this, what's foundational to that, and that's a great customer service thing, that as quickly as a property transfers, just even in a welcome packet, it gives the new person at their house.
Welcome to Webster.
Welcome to Webster, but it also has functionality to, this is your easements, don't do, whatever. The assessment department gets data when the property changes hands, and for some reason now, I'll throw you an acronym, BAS, which handles our IPS system, is that right, Paul?
That's correct.
They don't play nice in the sandbox.
So it's
with
a gap.
giving the data from the assessment department to the DPW department. I'll leave you with that. And for the last couple of years, it sounds like it's been, they've Steve Peace in IT, they've kind of, beat on him, and he's like, look, it's the software, it's the application, I can't help on that. Josh has really got a handle on this, and he's done something with BAS, the manufacturer, the whatever. He's got their attention, and they are deep into figuring out what the problem is. As soon as that problem's figured out, and we get more real-time data into DPW of when a property transfers, we're going to go and start doing that package out to the new property owner. So it is funny why it stopped 4 or 5 years ago. This might go to that organizational structure thing I always talk about. If a guy did it, a gal did it, but it's not a documented process of a job title, then when that guy or gal retires and that institutional knowledge goes out, some of the things they might have done go out. Mm-hmm. That can't happen. To have a continuity of a business, and you have to have those process documents.
It's funny,
and we're working toward that.
Because this document right here was a result of the audit. In the audit itself, we did phenomenal. The only thing is, I was doing a lot of the stuff, but it was all up here. It wasn't in here, and it's the only thing we got dinged on. So I wrote up exactly what I do, regardless of name. It went to title, and now it became part of the document. So we're now compliant, just like exactly what you're saying. It's something that needs to be documented so that it becomes part of our standard protocol,
Yeah.
not by character or person.
I gotta tell you, that's something I wanna get done quickly, because it hits on organizational structure and it hits on customer service. And actually, I think it'll minimize some of these license things coming in the door for stuff.
It would help.
It might help, but I don't think it'll
You'd
minimize.
think, you'd think at the time of closing on a property, that you would be given a tape map of your property that would include the easements labeled on it.
Barry, it is. The problem is, and Charlie, probably if you enclose it, if you're signing 30, 40 documents, you don't look at that. I can attest to the same thing. That's why we're sending out 4 to 6 weeks after they moved in, because then it comes by itself in the mail, and they're gonna have their attention. You sign 30 or 40 documents that are closing, I don't pay attention. I'm happy I'm getting through all, I'm signing it away. So that's why we're doing it after the fact.
Yeah.
But that sounds like that piece is missing that needs to be reinstalled. As far
Yeah,
as
the
the
BAS is we're talking to the
The
IPS.
IPS, those SOBs. Oh, sorry.
That sounds like BS to me.
I will tell you this though, I mean, this is where it's reared its ugly head, is that on some, you know how we send out, and it's gonna be a segue into our next conversation,
Well, I have one more.
the letters, to people that live within 300 feet of a proposed project, if it's going to planning board, and I think it's 100 feet on the ZBA board, public hearing type stuff.
Yeah.
We're sending out to people the data we have in DPW of who lives in that house, and we're sending out to somebody who sold that house a year ago.
Yeah, or 10 years ago.
Well, how's that possible? No, we don't get the data from the assessment department because they can't get it to us. Well, but you're sending it to the name of the person, the way that they're doing it, and the name is, the previous owner.
Current household.
Yeah, well, you wanna get away from that. If you really want somebody to open the thing, I mean, that's why you have mail merge. But that might be a moot point, what I just brought up, because our next topic, right, Charlie, is about potentially getting rid of the process or the policy or code of mailing the letters and just going with signs on the proposed project.
One more issue I want to address, which actually segued from the EPA unfunded mandates directly into a townwide drainage district. And I know we've discussed this before, but I didn't want to bring it up because we pay $10,213 per year into the coalition funds. And that's a black and white dollar amount that we pay into the coalition. The services that we get back from the county and the coalition are what help us drastically meet compliance, but nonetheless, there's a lot of drainage. All the watersheds, especially being 303 delisted, they might not have direct gutters or storm sewers, but they're still part of the watershed. They're still part of the services that we provide via the unfunded mandates. So I think this is probably a great time to introduce a townwide drainage system because everybody in this town is part of a drainage district, regardless, or a watershed, one way or another, whether it's Shipbuilders, 4 Mile, Mill Creek, or Glen Edith, which goes right down to Runnequay Bay. Everybody's water drained somewhere, and they're all paying into this unfunded mandate.
Well, Joe, you grabbed 20 minutes. Love it.
I think I crammed as much in.
You did all right, and I'm guessing that we can make up some of that time on the next topic, but that remains to be seen based on how much discussion the board has with it. And is this, Josh, the next topic, something you would be doing the presentation on?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. You got a microphone there, right?
Yeah, I'm mic'd up.
I bet you are. All righty.
So, yeah, as the supervisor mentioned, the current process for our planning and zoning boards require a public notification to anyone living within 100 feet of the project property for the zoning board and 300 feet for the planning board. So currently, we have a template letter that's in our application packet that we distribute to the applicant. We provide them with the address list, which there have been some issues in terms of having up-to-date, accurate data. And then we're trusting that the applicant then sends out these notifications to the neighbors on the list. And then we require the applicant to come back to town hall within a 10-day period prior to the meeting, and they have to submit an affidavit that basically they attest that they did the mailings. And it requires a notary, so we do have a notary at town hall. We did revamp all of our application forms earlier this year to try and streamline them, make them a little more understandable and not as overwhelming, especially for the average resident that isn't exposed to this sort of thing on a regular basis. And what we found with the letters is, a lot of times cases get tabled or need to be rescheduled for a variety of reasons, and it's causing applicants to have to remail several times for the same project. And then the residents that are receiving these letters get confused in terms of dates and times of when the meetings are actually going to be held. So there's been some internal conversations with some of the board members and town staff to take a look at moving away from these letters and mailings and going to a posted sign system. So we did a little investigating, got some quotes, and the proposal for consideration and discussion would be essentially eliminating the mailing notifications and going directly to this post and sign system. And we would propose that we would buy approximately 25 of these signs to cover both planning and zoning boards. And they're just generic, they basically state this property is under review by the town of Webster. It would have a phone number and our web address. We've made a concerted effort to really put a lot of this information out on the website so that, especially due to COVID and the fact that we're not inviting people to the public meetings for in-person attendance, we want to provide the opportunity for them to review the plans online. They can read the project description, look at renderings, things of that nature. So we would propose to put the link, the web address on the sign as well, so that basically anybody passing by that has an interest in that particular proposal or project would have an opportunity to know about it, because not everybody is getting these mailings currently. And if it's something they're interested in, they can either give us a call to ask some questions and learn more about the project, or visit the website and review the material for themselves.
Have I seen these in other towns?
Yes. Village of Webster.
Yeah, other towns.
Other towns,
That is
that's
a
what I
typical
thought.
thing.
Webster did this. This is what Webster did. I think I still have my sign from my application 25 years ago, but but that's what we did here. When I was on the zoning board, that's what we did.
Okay.
We posted signs, either tacked them up onto the property or on a post.
Why did you get away from it?
I don't know. It was changed sometime. I think we concluded, based on the law, on our code, that it was changed in 1996, I believe, mid-1996. I have an old code book, and I looked in there to see what was set forth regarding notice, and there was nothing. I mean, other than that it would be published with 5 days' notice in the paper, and that was it in the official paper. And that's what's required by law, not 5 days' notice, but publication. That's all that's required, that you give public notice. There's nothing it says about mailing, there's nothing it says about posting.
We probably have to do that as well as
You still have to publish in the paper.
Right.
We publish the agenda anyway, so that's not a problem. It's usually part of the agenda. Josh, as far as the cost goes, right now, it's on the applicant to send these letters out. Is the cost of the sign going to be deferred, not deferred, is it going to be put on to the applicant?
Well, that's a possibility. We would initially purchase the signs, 25 of them, like I said, and the thought was that when the project goes to the board and is approved or denied, they then return the sign to us and it's reused for the next set of applications.
Would they be the ones posting the signs?
So there is a vendor that specifically, that's what they do, is that they post the sign and then they pick it up 2 weeks later, after the public hearing has occurred. And that service does cost $19.95. So we would propose probably just increasing our planning board or zoning board fee by $20 to cover that additional expense.
Okay. So, and then we would have a vendor do it,
Correct, they handle it, they go and put the post in
and then take it down.
and then take it down. It's much like your standard real estate for sale sign.
Okay.
And
I know that the ones in the village of Webster are, I think Will puts those up? Yeah. But they're the size of, like, the political signs, they're the same type as the political signs, and you can get those signs made for like $6-7. So yeah,
Those type of signs you're talking about
Yeah.
they'll wear away from weather. These don't, right, Josh?
right, these are
aluminum.
Yeah, these.
well, that's why I'm asking the question, because they're,
It's got one right there.
Yeah, they're like this. They hang with a post, and this is just an example from the town of Victor.
Yeah.
They're pretty heavy duty. They're UV protectant, weather resistant, and they would be lasting quite a while, and we would be reusing them. But there would be an initial expense, obviously, to purchase the signs. We did get about 4 quotes from different sign companies. I think they're included in your packets that were provided to you. Depending on the level of sign and the gauge of the metal, ranged anywhere from, I believe, $700 up to $1,800, depending on which company.
So that minimally, the applicant is spending $150 on postage, is that correct? If they gotta send out 300 letters?
Well, they don't typically have to send out that many letters, but yes, they're
300 feet, sorry.
Yes. They're
It doesn't mean there's
covering the
300 letters, but.
Yeah, they're
however many
covering the
people-
cost of the initial mailing, and again, like I said, a lot of times they have to mail multiple times if things get rescheduled or tabled.
And that cost is in addition to their application anyway.
Correct.
Hey, Josh, you know what that's like? Is that pretty much the information that's needed?
He
For
said
the
he
most
wanted a
part.
website.
We do have a sign shop.
Oh. That's an opportunity.
there you go.
Make the signs right down.
How we can make those signs.
How much are you gonna charge us, Joe?
Well, he's gotta cover his retirement.
I like it.
I like the idea, if the town can do it at no cost, that's great, but.
Well, it's not gonna be no cost.
I understand that, but the ones I've seen in different towns, obviously I haven't seen Victor's, they're all the same size as your political signs, and they're extremely inexpensive. I've had
They're paper,
signs.
cardboard.
Well, no, they're not, they're plastic, right? And printed. I just being the cheap guy that I am, I just have a problem with the cost of, $40.
If this is a sign that we're going to use and can be reused, we have blanks and we have all sorts of the retroreflective,
Right.
MUTCD code signs, we can easily produce them.
Well,
I think it's a great idea versus sending the letters out repeatedly.
and that's, I guess from a.
Much more efficient.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Pros and cons of the letter schematic that is our current code, Charlie, versus this proposal we're talking about to scrap the letter schematic and go with these signs.
If we make the signs ourselves, someone from the DPW would have to install.
No.
So he's got a vendor.
No, the vendor's not gonna do it if we're not purchasing the sign from
We
them.
weren't gonna.
No, it's a different
And the vendor, all he does is put them in and take them out.
There's two vendors, one that makes the
We just give
sign.
them the sign, and then okay.
They take care of the rest.
Right.
And you know, print an article on the website saying this is what we're gonna be doing in the future.
I don't have any problem with signs.
I have a question for Charlie, though. Because our current code says that we have to send the letters out, do we have to modify it?
Well, I think the code, I don't have the code right in front of me, I think it says the applicant is charged with doing it, I
Okay.
think. So,
Yeah, it'd have to be-
do we have to modify it? Strictly speaking, no, we can just not enforce it. I mean, that's one way of dealing with it. But, if you want to, you know, there's nothing, this is not putting any onus on anybody else, just saying, I mean, we're gonna be doing it, so
Right.
there's really no need even to put it in the code unless you want to.
That's
That's my take.
What I've heard in my brief time at this, that people come in to the public hearing and say, you know, I live within 300 feet of there and I never got the letter. And they say, but you're here.
Right.
So you found out some way. If the letter is not the law of the land anymore and it's just the sign or two signs, depending upon how large the lot, it would seem as if there'd be less people that could come into the ZBA or into the planning board and have a plausible complaint about not knowing about it.
No, I think the signs are a great idea. To your point, Tom, neighbors on either side, they drive by, see the sign, they're like, well, maybe I want to call that number, find out what's going on over there, right?
Code book.
I mean, we do appreciate the oxymoronic aspect of somebody coming into a meeting saying, you know, I didn't see the sign, you know, or I didn't get the letter, but you're here.
Yeah.
Well, they could have seen it posted out
You know
there.
what I mean? We're not gonna win in all situations, are we?
No, we never do.
No? Okay.
It says the applicant shall be responsible for notifying by first-class mail all property owners of record within blah, 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 of the outside perimeter. So it puts it on the applicant.
Okay, great.
So again, it's for us to enforce that.
We might want to change it.
Yeah,
You definitely should.
leaving it there and just not enforcing it seems like that's an invitation.
Go back to the way it was, like you say, the old code had nothing in there about us doing. I can't hear you. We did, which was.
Leaving the code the way it is and just not enforcing it, it seems like a problem waiting to happen down the line. Leaving ourselves.
What you do is you just revise the code. You revise the code along with the other ones that you're gonna be revising.
That I agree with. And we're doing it globally, which is.
You do a bundle and you revise it at that time.
Yeah. And to Patty's point, for anybody watching, this is the type of code, the way you articulated earlier when Joe said about asbestos pipe, that I think the public gets nervous when we talk about changing codes. This is it's a common sense.
It's a housekeeping.
It's a housekeeping item.
There
That's
you
the
go,
best
Barry.
way to explain it, yeah. Well,
Thanks for working on this,
what
Josh.
do you think?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Great.
Myself,
Now we have a new vendor, manufacturer. The vendor to hang up the signs bill is that's not you. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So, once again, can everybody on the board happy if we continue on with this and have him work within?
Yes.
And then obviously we'll talk with Barry and Boone and Tony Kashani, because I think they liked this, if I remember correctly. So, off we'll go. Thanks. Did we catch up some minutes there?
Change is sometimes good.
we're right on schedule.
Not bad. We're at 6:30. Thanks, Josh. Well, see, this is the problem with Mass. I think that's Mark. I think that's Dan.
Chris,
Is that Chris Bilo back there?
it is.
Come on.
He's still on incognito a little bit. You're gonna have to introduce yourself to him.
Anyway, well, several gentlemen are going to probably get up to the podium and we're going to present and have a discussion on the update on the progress of the Ready project, MO 59, Sandbar Park. And Dan, is it safe to say, should we say also MO 56 or just MO 59?
No, 56 and
56 and 59. All right, so,
We had a meeting the other night, we met with the Sandbar Park Committee to start up again. And this is the presentation that Mark and Dan brought. And we thought at the end of the meeting, we thought that it would be a really good idea for them to bring the same presentation to this board, and so everybody could be informed.
Good, thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Mark Bayer from Bayer Landscape Architecture, as Tom had noted, Dan Savage from Passero, Dustin Welch from Passero. And thank you for having us. Barry and Tom had, initially we talked about just coming in for discussion already, but we thought we were kind of at a place with the park project that it would make total sense to kind of give the board a nice update on the overall project. So that's what we wanted to do tonight and kind of bring you up to date on it. And Dan's going to speak to the ready portion of it. And I just want to run through a few slides with you to kind of give you the background on where we've been and what we're doing and where we're going with the project. So just briefly, as Barry knows, we started the project with a lot of research through the history of this really unique place and kind of that recreational background, looking at it through time, and it's always been a destination kind of place for outdoor activities. And so we looked through that. We looked through the chronology of in the history of the place, its timeline. We looked at land use. We looked at environmental issues, many things. In our work with Barry's group, which is the Project Advisory Committee, it's composed of 10 or 12 people that have helped advise us as we've gone through the project. We've met probably 6 or 7 times now, and they've been our partners in the project. And through work with them and based on the research and analysis, we did some very early conceptual design work, which was kind of beginning to locate some of the key features, such as a location for the lodge trail systems. And one of the major things that we kind of came out of the work of this group was the potential to do something different with Lake Road and move Lake Road a little bit to the north, up in the eastern stretch, which kind of then gives you this wonderful green along the bay, which we don't have today. We have road within 7 feet of the edge of water, and it's really not safe for pedestrians or bikes and people moving and enjoying the bay edge. So one of the things was very early on, we looked at the existing road alignment. We looked at this option of moving the road north because we have the room to do it. And so we developed this sort of very conceptual plan, again, showing waterfront access, the potential for a new lodge structure, enhanced rehabilitated docks, enhanced parking. And we brought this plan to the public in this room, I believe, to kind of give them a chance early in the process to comment, give us feedback, and really help us understand what the community wants. And I think it was a great success. We had a pretty good turnout. We had responses at that night, but we also had, the town had website access. We had Facebook page up. So we got tons and tons of comments, and we went back to our committee after this meeting. We compiled all the data, we presented it to the committee, and we then began to look at refinement of the plan, and we met with them again early that spring to kind of run through that. And at that meeting, I'll show you the plan that evolved out of that in a second, but right about this time, a lot of events started happening. We had, we were finishing up the next iteration of the plan. The town was working on the idea of having a restaurant facility in the lodge, talking to the current restaurant owners, the Bayside owners, and working through that while we were evolving our plan. And the other thing that came out of that period was the idea that we needed to move away from a lease to a licensing agreement. That was a lot of work done on that with the Department of State, and understanding that in order to have a private enterprise in a public park, public building, that licensing agreement had to happen. So that was happening. And then in June, some exciting news came out of the governor's office. There was a whole grant program called the READY program, Lake Ontario Resilience and Economic Development Initiative. That was announced in June. This team and others at the town, Matt Chatfield, we worked on getting that package together and out. It was submitted in August, and in October of 19, we learned that 5 grants were awarded to Webster, 2 of which really impact and are totally, completely intertwined with the park. One is the Lake Road improvements, which Dan will talk to in a minute, but basically elevating and helping improve the road, and Sandbar Park flood resilience, which is providing flood protection along the bay shoreline. That was occurring, and we were working on that, obviously in November through early part of 20, change in administration. Tom's office came in and his group, and we engaged with Tom right early in the year. I believe it was February. We had our first meeting and talked about this project and the READY grant, and started that process. Mark Yeager, former Parks Commissioner, retired. Chris Bilo came in the spring, and then COVID set in and kind of set things back a bit for everything. The good news is during this time period, the READY grants provided us with a great shot in the arm in terms of funding. We got approximately $2.3 million, and the project really kick-started again. This past spring, early summer, we really got moving, and currently we're into, I'll get into it in just a minute, but we're into weekly conversations with all of the various agencies and so on. So early on, there was 2 versions of this plan. This version was the existing road alignment, our park, and then there was the second version, which was the realigned road, which basically from the eastern end of the site pushed the road away from the bay edge and opened up green space along that edge. And the major programs of the park have been fairly consistent from day one. Basically, recreation and education zones along the lake. This is primarily it's a passive park. Waterfront trails, boardwalks, multimodal access, in other words, ability for people, bikes, and cars to get to this place. Very important. I think one of the big things that we saw and still see today with this place is that it's not friendly to pedestrians, and one of the biggest goals of this project is to make it accessible for pedestrians and bicycles and make it safe that way. So that's a big push in the project. Obviously, picnic shelters, play elements, natural play elements, a car-top boat launch for kayaks, canoes, and waterfront access is key. Obviously, we're in this incredible place between the bay and the lake, and many other things, including the lodge. The lodge program essentially still remains the same. It is a 2-story structure, the lower level being a restaurant of some kind, food service, and the upper level being a public gathering space, event space potentially. Barry has talked a lot about the idea of taking the history of this area and getting it up into that space. It can become an educational tool. One of the things that you probably all know, but this area down at the east end, one of the driving forces behind that has been a cooperative kind of program with the school district, getting students down to the environmental areas, but that upper level of the lodge potentially could be this great spot for gathering for students too, you know, with teachers and so on. So that's the overview plan. Just quickly, this is the west end, and basically at the west end, from Castaways is about where this pointer is over here, on the right side of the screen. And one of the things that the park, we have this linear stretch from Castaways west, where we're on the old rail embankment, and the hope is to develop just a very simple trail system all the way through the park. There's a fireman's memorial proposal in this zone. There's some benches and seating, but very simple on the west side. And this is the core park plan right now. And what's going on here, as I mentioned in the early concept plan that we brought to the public, and we will be bringing this again to them later this fall, early winter. But the idea here, again, was to consolidate and organize parking this is the proposed new lodge facility, which would be built basically in the footprint of the current Bayside restaurant. And the idea behind that is we could never get this facility reconstructed elsewhere on the site as close and as proximate to water, because it wouldn't be permitted right now with current regulations, but we can rebuild in that location. And again, this would be a two-story structure, and the idea with the two-story structure was not only to allow the restaurant operation to be able to continue to operate in that location, but the other idea really was that we could create this great gathering space on the second floor. So first and second floor, obviously you can see the bay, but with the railroad embankment, by going 2 stories, we'll also be able to see the lake from the upper floor of the structure, which I think is wonderful. And again, it's one of the really amazing aspects of this park. I mean, where else do you get this kind of water frontage? And so just to highlight a few other things, obviously we're looking to have waterfront access along the lake, some trails and walks. We're thinking of a pavilion of some sort where you can get out of the sun and sit, watch watch over the lake at night. You could sit there and enjoy the sunset. Where we have picnic areas over here, fun features for kids with, we're talking about a little slide because there is a grade change over there, some fun things. And this concept, we call it the fishbone garden. And the idea there, again, a fun thing for kids to stroll through and explore. It would be done in a way which would be beautiful to look at, but also playful, because we're hoping, of course, this park is going to attract families, and it's the kind of thing that makes it a little bit unique. That was actually inspired by when I was down here after a flood event a couple of years ago. There was fish kind of trapped in the parking lot on their side, and I was helping them get out of there. And this idea came of, hey, let's do something fun with this. So anyway, so this is the core park. I don't want to meander, too far down the road with this, but again, key features: improved parking, great waterfront access, new lodge facility, improved parking, and organized parking, and road improvements, which are related now to the READY grant. So the east end is, as we go towards Bay Road and move east, there will be a connection from that main park area that would go through this little wooded zone, let you cross, and you can see the kind of space we're creating along the bay edge by the road shift. And that will allow an at-grade trail which, now you know how it is. It's just like you feel like you're going to fall in the bay. But with this change, you will have a great connector path, which could accommodate, pedestrians and bicycles, and you'll get off the edge of pavement, which is nice. And then you will have access to boardwalk and be able to go and move through the wetlands is the idea as an environmental education area. And get over to this point here, which is kind of in that wooded site. It's at the edge of the wetland. And this is a spot where we talked about doing simple kind of stone seats for students to gather and a biology teacher to explain what's going on with the wetland. Kayak or canoe enthusiasts to be able to bring and kayak and beach here and look at some of the, explore the trail system, explore the wetlands, and that's what this zone in the park is about. And again, a continuous trail all the way down into this area with the hope at some point that we'll be able to connect up to Bay Road and continue the access. So that's kind of an overview of where this stands. I want to turn this over to Dan for a minute, just so he can talk a little bit about specifically what the READY project is and what it does, and let him speak to that.
Thanks, Mark. So MO 56 is the realignment of Lake Road, and that's to accomplish many of the things Mark just described. What we're looking for is to push Lake Road further to the north and open up that area hugging the bay for this park-like trail through there. The MO 56 really kudos to the town for securing those funds, because without it, this portion of the project would have lagged for lack of that funding. This is really going to expedite that phase of the project. Also in the realignment of Lake Road, we're going to elevate portions of it so it's up out of the high water level, so that in the event we get another high water event, Lake Road through here is now passable for residents, emergency vehicles, and the rest of it. MO 59 is shoreline protection. So the pink or maroon line there.
Can you blow that up a little bit? There you go.
So the intent for the shoreline protection, again, is to buffer the core areas of the park, particularly the lodge, with a combination of like a knee-high stone wall protection. Portions of it will be graded berm. Others will be use of shoreline vegetation to protect the bay side of the park. That knee-high wall there, highlighted in pink, would be tied in with the architecture for the lodge. So again, in the event of a high water event, the water side of that would be inundated, but it would not negatively impact the lodge or being able for the lodge to operate during a prolonged high water event. This section of Lake Road here would be elevated. We'd have to regrade between Lake Road and that shoreline protection to again provide the protection from water and inundating, passage along Lake Road. So those are the main things going on with READY. As Mark said earlier, we're meeting weekly with the alphabet soup of state agencies. All of them have a hand in this, from the environment to flooding to coastal hazard zones. And we're getting their input every week, going back, refining the drawings, and a lot of back and forth dialogue. We did have members of DEC out for a site tour. They got to appreciate more what we're trying to achieve with the park, actually walking it. We think we're starting to change some minds over there because the overall good that the Sandbar Park would have versus some, bureaucratic procedural things. So we'll keep beating on them and, until we can get the type of park that the town deserves.
Thanks, Dan. So I wanted to, just run through exactly what's going on currently with the project. Passero is working on detailed survey mapping so that we can go into more of a construction drawing phase. We need this level of mapping that we haven't had to date. And so that's in progress right now, along with a lot of obviously related research to property ownership and property lines and that sort of thing. We've talked about already the weekly regulatory calls with all of the agencies. We, in this time, are beginning to refine the plans you're seeing tonight as we work with these agencies and coordinating with particularly DEC, as Dan mentioned, to have them part of our process, because that's really going to be critical to getting the permitting part of this project done. And we feel if we engage them, it's going to go better as we advance the project. Dan is working, Passero is working on a process called parkland alienation, which is essentially allows us to move the road over. So what is currently right-of-way becomes parkland, and what we're moving into, which is current parkland, becomes right-of-way. The goal is to have the parkland will either stay exactly at the same acreage or area, or we may actually, we're hoping to get actually a net gain in parkland through this process. Towns, I know having ongoing conversations with Bayside owners, and that process is ongoing regarding licensing agreements and the potential for that. So that's some of the highlights of what's currently happening. As I mentioned, Dan mentioned, we recently have been out in the field with DEC and walked the entire site, spent several hours out there with them, and we took them up to the west end, showed them what our intent is there. We're in a couple of zones that the DEC classifies, and as part of our process with them is getting them to understand our goals and working with them to achieve our goals within what they call structural hazard zone and natural protected features zone. And so that's some of the things we're actually in process on with them. Same thing is happening in this area of the shoreline. We're discussing our approach there. They're going back and forth with us on what is permittable and how we can achieve permitting. And then at the east end, we're working with them, and we have the DEC biologist and permit officer for wetlands out there, Rob Call. And Rob was very helpful in explaining to us the DEC perspective on the wetlands, and all indications are that as long as we keep our platforms and things modest but still very accessible, they're going to work through this with us. That's our plan. And we've actually, at our last meeting with them, we talked at length about having regular site visits, regular follow-up meetings, so we can move the process along quickly. So that's what's going on right now. And then our next steps, just to briefly run through, again, we're going to be finishing the mapping. The READY project coordination is going to go on for some time. That will continue. We are refining our plans as we speak to hone them and, again, kind of work with the environmental constraints that we have and get those plans in good shape and working closely with DEC and other agencies. Pass Row is going to be continuing with the park alienation process with the state and county to get that moved along. And we are continuing design of that environmental area at the east end, which I talked to you about a minute ago, in the wetlands. We're hoping by, by December of this year to have another iteration of the plan that's going to take it to the next level, and that'll be done. That's being done in conjunction with the READY grants. We're really looking at them as it's one project from a design perspective. And the other thing that we are, hoping, and this is something that we want to talk to you about a little bit tonight, is in order for this project to continue to advance at a reasonable pace, the lodge is something that is such a key and central part of the project, being right there on the bay, and we're trying to confirm that we're on the right track with the idea of, the two-story structure, the restaurant food facility on a lower level, and we're hoping, and I'm asking about this because the READY project that has the flood resiliency has to tie right into that building. And the park design, of course, hinges on, where we ultimately go with that. So as, if the town board can, I think, focus some time on that and come and help decide on whether you're committed to that direction, and maybe you are right now, it's necessary in order for us to keep our schedule going. So, so that's something that, and the other thing is just generally, we think we're on a good course in terms of the overall park design. We think that it's responds to, all the things that we've been asked in terms of making this a great resource for the community with all the amenities of a really wonderful passive recreational park, with great environmental education components, great, family-oriented features, enhanced parking down there, and all the things that, in my mind, when I first saw this site and talked about this project, it's going to have all the things to make it an incredibly beautiful and very, very unique and special destination for this community and beyond. And so two things I'd ask you to think about. One, again, kind of solidifying your thoughts on the lodge and the restaurant facility. And then secondly, confirming with us that as a board you are in support of the general direction things are going with the park. So that's really two things I just want to leave you with and talk about and see if so that we can keep moving with our job.
Thank you.
Quick question, I guess. Being very involved in the 5 READY grant projects, especially MO 56 and 59, I almost see those as being the skeleton behind now what you guys are trying to put together is the aesthetics and what the park and the new lodge, as you call it, the new Bayside. We have a very good idea. In fact, we know exactly the economic aspects to this board, and we've voted on resolutions to accept the bids and how much the town participation is on the ready projects. It's actually upwards of $3 million in awards when you count all 5 projects.
Right.
And I know you just reconvened this committee that was dormant for the last however long, because it really, once the flooding happened in 19, it kind of stalemated you moving along. Am I understanding this correct? You're looking for board direction on the fact that we're now going to be looking at in the future how much this is going to cost to build that structure, to put in all the features that you just said that go beyond the ready, the moving of the road, beyond the, I call it a break wall, all those things. Is that an accurate statement? That's what you're looking for the board to?
Basically, in concept, if we're moving in the right, if we're moving in a direction and the board is supportive of the direction, part of our next steps is going to be, because we're going to be at a place in design where we'll be able to assess all the costs. We can develop phasing with you. And we'll be able to advise and talk it through on how we can implement. That's a very big part of the next step. Again, in order for us to continue to advance, though, it is important to understand if there's a commitment to the restaurant idea and the lodge idea, because it's so tied to what we have to do.
Barry, you're the gumshoe on the board on this one, being on that committee. I would assume that conceptually we are interested in this.
Yes?
Yeah. Bill?
This is the first time we've heard about the lodge location that I'm aware of. I know it's been discussed, I just don't remember hearing about it being in that location.
It was presented in that location at the public meeting.
I just don't remember it.
Yeah.
So I thought you did discuss the fact that you couldn't change the footprint, that the footprint had to stay in regulations and those sorts of things.
Let me explain, John, let me explain something here.
Yeah.
In the beginning, at the beginning of this, we talked about a lodge on the other side of the road. Okay? Early on, we discovered that the DEC was not going to allow us to do that. That's not possible. Okay? The best we can do over there is maybe a pavilion, like the one he showed up near the top.
Right.
Something like that. That's all we can do on the other side of the road. So then, because of parking and building multiple parkings for multiple lodges and that kind of stuff, we conceptually came to the idea that we're going to stay right on the footprint where we are at the Bayside, and we've had meetings with those people, and they have shown us great interest in continuing to operate out of that facility, but the DEC has told us that if whatever we do there, it's going to have to stay on the same footprint.
Right.
We can go up, but we can't go out.
Right.
There's a little bit of wiggle room, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, a tiny bit of wiggle room as far as what we build there, but basically they want us on the same footprint, and that's it.
Right.
I'm excited about the plan. I think it looks great. And for those who are watching, and for anybody in the room who wasn't at this, at the early meetings of this, and the inception of how we ended up with Bear Associates, I think as a board, one of the things that really impressed us, Mark, was your passion around this project. And I still see that as you discuss it. You are living and breathing this project, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. We are.
Yeah.
We're extremely excited about it. In my mind, it's a rare opportunity in our region, and we are going to do it right.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's great.
And just probably on what Barry had said about the current owners that operate the Bayside, my last discussion meeting with them, I was with Matt Chatfield, and we went down there literally about a week before COVID broke out, and I just very simply wanted to know, are they willing and able to still be the restaurateur and our licensee, I guess would be, because what they're doing now there, the economic model, what they pay in licensing fees, the whole thing, this proposal is a very different thing. And I wanted to hear from them, willing and able, because it's a totally different economic model for them. Certainly, if it goes the way we think it is planned, they'll have much more, less risk, because it'll be a longer-term licensing agreement. I think right now they're essentially in a month-to-month.
Right.
So, but there's a give and take to that, and they understood that. I felt pretty good about the fact they completely understood that they're going from a model that is a month-to-month with, really, when they moved into it years ago, there was no build-out cost. Now they're going to get into something that, is a very different proposal. And they certainly did not seem, they seemed to say that they were willing and able. So,
That's great.
it's been 6 months. I think I need to go pay them a visit again, especially if we're going to start moving forward on some of this.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful, and the other thing that Dustin and Dan well know, because they're responsible for the actual lodge design, is that it'd be great to get into that facility and actually see and start field measuring and doing some things like that.
Looks like I might be going down there with you.
Sounds good.
We'll talk.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, guys.
I have a couple questions, if I may.
Please.
And obviously, through the environmental stuff, how is SHPO? Obviously, you've had to address that, but being that that is an archaeological sensitive area, is SHPO,
Have you approached that with any of the DEC and environmental end of it? How have they been?
We've started those discussions. In summary, they're saying, well, much of this site was previously disturbed, the park and the restaurant. But we're following through on documentation and addressing any issues they may raise.
Okay. And then you had made a statement regarding kind of memorializing the geographical area and the sensitivity of it. Obviously, back at the turn of not this century, but the past century, regarding the trolley and the train, are you guys, and I can speak on our behalf, when we just put the parking lot in there, we ended up uncovering the axle of one of the trains with the wheel on it. So it'd be a nice attribute to throw it in there. But also that, and I remember growing up as a kid, my family's been here since 1837, there were multiple concrete bins down in there, and we uncovered a couple of foundations that'd be where the rail bed was on this side of the parking lot. So when you guys go to unearth and do stuff, as far as knowing what those bins were and that they may still be there, we found some of the foundation. You're not moving those.
Yeah.
They were built back when things were built real tough. So, but I was know we do have that axle and.
No, we've talked about a lot at our committee, and we'd like to incorporate some of those historic, elements into the design.
Okay, and then one other question is, being this is ready money, and obviously the town has a share cost in this, is the highway alienated from participating in the road relocation, or is that something that the county will contract, or is that going to go to private sector?
That hasn't been decided.
Well, being if it's federal monies, it may be pre-decided for us, but I didn't know if we have, but
I thought
that's,
it was state money.
if it's state money, I don't know, but just something to look at, because obviously our cost contribution could be in-kind services, so. Food for thought. Also
Thanks,
reduces
guys.
the cost.
Would you also consider parking lot construction?
Absolutely. We just finished the one for Border Patrol over on Pattonwood. Yeah.
This is why it's good to have everybody in the room.
Yep. Oh, by the way, if there's any signs that need to be made,
We are a one-stop shop, what can I say? We're actually the only town
We're all in the
under
town of Webster, by goodness. I'm hoping we'll have different kind of signage than what we can develop in our sign shop.
Oh, no.
We've got some talent.
Okay.
I know what their capabilities are.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you for
Really
having us.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks for the updates, it's good to see.
Barry, thanks for having me come in.
About the meeting we had this morning.
You know what, I'll reach out to him.
Okay.
Because I don't have where the pipe goes exactly.
No,
where it goes,
I didn't
so,
know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Charlie, I gotta add, the formal part, if you wanna call it, of this informal meeting is concluded, but I would like to, and Charlie, there's 6 criteria that we can go into executive session on, and one of them is contracts.
Yeah, I can,
And I would like to,
well, certain kinds of contracts,
yeah,
not just blanket contracts, but,
and as you look at that.
it's, yeah, well, if it's a matter that's going to involve litigation or potential litigation, if it's a matter involving, the employment history or, employment of a particular person or corporation, if it is involving the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property.
Okay.
So I don't know that there's
I can make an
any
argument with
contracts
it.
per se, there's really nothing in there about contracts
Well,
per se.
definitely on litigation, definitely on employment. I think there's aspects to it I would like to discuss with the board that touch on each of those. So,
Okay, so you're saying that there's something that you want to discuss with the board that may involve potential litigation?
Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Proposed litigation, proposed or pending litigation?
Yes.
Okay. Does it involve is there anything involving employment of a particular person, not just generically, but a particular person or person?
Yes.
All right. Well, in that case, then the motion would be made to go into executive session under Public Officers Law 105, subdivision 1, subdivisions D and F.
Well, that is the motion I'm making.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Joe, I hadn't talked to you about that yet, because I was waiting till we got it. So you, talked to you about your schedule, how much time you would have to do something like that.
Not knowing the total scope, obviously,
Right.
but I didn't know offhand, obviously, the state federal monies in the alienating system, not even.
Federal would, but I don't believe state does.
And isn't this state money?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the state money, so.
Yeah, it is state money.
Yeah.
And Karen, because this is unprecedented, because we have been
Joe?
live streaming workshops only since the governor's executive orders, can we officially tell everybody we're done for the evening
Yes.
and we're not coming back? But thank you, everybody who watched from home and or is watching in the future